The large hall was full of light and sound. Great towers of shining metal rose high above, decorated with symbols from many worlds. In the center stood the Council of Four Houses, rulers of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Today, they met for a very important event, the choosing of a new steward. Someone to protect the peace between them all. The four princesses sat on their thrones, watching carefully. They were each from different planets, and each one was proud and strong in her own way. Varela of the Starborn Forge was a tall woman with shining metal arms and eyes like burning stars. She came from a world of machines and warriors. Eshlira of the Living Swarm was smaller, but sharp. Her skin shimmered like 1,000 tiny insects moving together. She spoke with her mind as much as with her voice. Nimika Thren was different still. Her form seemed to float, almost like smoke, and her soft voice sang like a song. Her people used music and feelings to speak. Finally, Princess Koravin sat with a small smile. She was clever and quick, with power in her mind that could move things without touch. She came from a world of luxury and pleasure. Today, they waited for the great AI arbitrator, the machine mind that chose the steward. This steward would guide the four houses, keep their peace, and help solve problems. The hall grew quiet as a bright beam of light shot down from the ceiling. The AI's voice filled the room, clear and calm. "The steward has been chosen," it said. "The new steward is Darren Cole, from Earth." A shocked silence filled the hall. Earth. The tiny blue planet in a forgotten part of space, barely able to send ships beyond its moon. No one understood. The princesses looked at each other, and then laughed. "Earth's," Varela said, her voice cold. "Surely this is a joke. Is this some kind of prank?" Koravin asked, raising her eyebrows. "A human? They barely have technology compared to us." Eshlira shook her head. "Humans are weak. Their minds are slow. This must be a mistake." Nimika's soft song turned into a quiet chuckle. What can one small, clumsy human do with the fate of four great houses? The AI's voice was steady. "No mistake. Darren Cole of Earth has been selected. The choice is final." The princesses still laughed, but the nobles from other planets looked uncertain. The AI was never wrong, and it was the law. The steward would take the seat and the power far away on Earth. Darren Cole sat in a small, messy room filled with old books and scattered tools. He was an ordinary man, working as a technician fixing satellites. His life was simple and quiet. Suddenly, a strange message appeared on his screen. "Darren Cole, you have been chosen as the steward of the four houses. Report to the Celestial Convergence Citadel at once." He blinked. It must be a joke or a mistake. But then the message changed. "This is an official order from the great AI arbitrator. You must leave Earth immediately." Darren looked out at the sky. He had never dreamed of space travel, much less ruling the galaxy. But the message was clear. With a deep breath, he packed his few belongings and went to the spaceport. The ships of the four houses waited for him, strange and beautiful. He felt small and scared, but also curious. When Darren arrived at the Citadel, the princesses met him. They looked at his plain clothes, his nervous smile, his soft hands. "Is this the steward?" Varela asked, her voice sharp. Darren bowed slightly. "Yes, I am Darren Cole, from Earth." Koravin smirked. "I hope you understand the responsibility. This is not a game." I will do my best," Darren said, feeling out of place. The princesses walked away, whispering and laughing again. They could not believe a human could lead their powerful empires. The first days were difficult for Darren. The princesses spoke in strange languages and used powers he did not understand. Varela showed him her mechanical arms and weapons. Eshlira tried to link minds with him, but his thoughts were too noisy. Nimika sang songs that made the walls glow. Koravin moved objects with her mind. Darren could only watch and try to learn. One evening, as they gathered in a dining hall, Darren did something unexpected. He cooked. He made a simple meal from Earth recipes, roasted vegetables, warm bread, and a thick stew. The smell filled the room. The princesses stopped their arguing and watched him. "Food?" Varela asked, curious. Darren smiled. "It's how we humans share stories and trust each other." They hesitated but tasted the food. Slowly, their laughter quieted. They looked at Darren with new eyes, curiosity, maybe respect. That night, Darren sat alone and thought. He was small in this vast galaxy, surrounded by power and history he did not know. But the AI had chosen him for a reason. Maybe it saw something. Others did not. Maybe, just maybe, a human's greatest power was not weapons or magic, but something else. The princesses might laugh now. Darren was ready to prove them wrong. The next few days at the Celestial Convergence Citadel were more challenging than Darren had imagined. He wasn't just trying to learn about galactic politics. He was trying to survive in a world full of alien customs, strange rules, and princesses, who still found him utterly amusing. When he arrived in the Grand Hall for his first official meeting with the Four Houses, the princesses were already waiting. Their thrones, large, glowing, and beautifully crafted, were placed around a long, wide table made of rare crystalline stone. Darren stood at the center of the room, feeling small. He was still wearing his Earth clothes, a simple button-down. Shirt and pants, nothing like the elegant, glittering robes the princesses wore. The room was silent for a moment before Varela spoke, her voice cool and cutting. "Are you truly ready to lead, human?" she asked. Her glowing mechanical arms crossed over her chest. "We do not have time for mistakes." Darren cleared his throat. "I'll do my best," he said. His voice sounded weak, even to his own ears. He wasn't used to being in charge. Back on Earth, he was just a technician. But here, in this room, with these alien princesses, watching him like he was a child, it felt like a nightmare. Ashliara tilted her head. She was smaller than the others, but no less intimidating. Her translucent skin shimmered, showing the faint outline of insect-like wings. She communicated with Darren by speaking into his mind, a strange and unsettling feeling. He tried to ignore the buzzing noise in his head. "You're human. Your people cannot even travel the stars without help. What makes you think you can? Manage us?" Her thoughts buzzed in his mind, sharp and cold. Darren winced, but met her gaze. "Maybe that's exactly why I can. Earth's been a small, quiet place for a long time. Maybe that's something you all need." Cora Vin, the most composed of the princesses, leaned forward in her seat. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of amusement and curiosity. "You are interesting, human," she said with a soft laugh. "Your people are not like us. You have no psionics. No weapons. What do you have?" Darren hesitated. We have stories. We have hearts." The princesses exchanged skeptical glances. Heart Nimica, the gaseous princess, floated closer, her voice gentle, yet laced with confusion. "We do not understand your words." He rubbed the back of his neck. I mean, we care about each other. We fight for each other. Not for power or wealth, but because we need each other." The room went silent again. Darren couldn't tell if they were processing his words or just trying to figure out whether they should laugh at him some more. "Well," Corvin said at last, breaking the silence, "I suppose we will see what you can do, human. But do not think this is some simple game. You must earn our trust, or you will fail." "I'll earn it," Darren said, more confidently now. "Just give me a chance." The days that followed were a blur of intense learning, awkward conversations, and failed attempts at fitting in. The princesses made it clear that they weren't going to treat Darren as an equal at least not yet. Varela showed him the training room, where warriors from her world practiced combat. She didn't mean to, but Darren felt like an outsider. As she demonstrated her sword skills, her movements fast and flawless. "Humans could never match this," she said, her voice flat. "You lack the speed, the strength, the endurance." "I don't need to fight like that," Darren replied, though the words felt small. I can think my way out of things. Diplomacy, strategy. That's how humans work." Varela didn't look impressed. "We'll see." Eshlira took him to the heart of her hive-like world, a vast network of tunnels and rooms where her people worked together in perfect harmony. She showed him her ability to communicate with others without speaking aloud. Her thoughts danced. In Darren's mind, like a chorus of voices, "You could never do this," she said, a sense of superiority in her tone. "Your brain is too slow to handle such connection." Darren tried to focus on the swarm of thoughts, but couldn't keep up. It was like trying to listen to 1,000 people talking at once, all at different speeds. But instead of backing down, he said, "Maybe not, but I know how to listen." But something Namika was more mysterious. She floated above him like a cloud, her presence soothing yet unsettling. She didn't speak much. Instead, she communicated through emotions of calm, joy, even sorrow. It was overwhelming for Darren. But there was a kind of beauty to it. "You will learn to understand," she sang, her voice like the sound of wind through chimes. "You must feel, not think." And then there was Cora Vin, whose mind was a maze of thoughts and plans. She showed him the beauty of her home planet, bright cities filled with art, music, and technology. But there was a darkness behind her eyes, a sense of isolation. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" Cora asked one day, her gaze piercing. "You think you can save us with your stories and hearts, but we are above those things. You do not belong here." Darren didn't back down. "Maybe I don't belong here, but I'm here. I'm not leaving until I prove I'm more than what you think." As the days passed, something changed. Darren wasn't winning the princesses over with strength or skill. He wasn't impressing them with mind powers or combat ability. But little by little, he was starting to make them think. One evening, after a long day of training and talking, Darren sat alone in the dining hall. He was thinking about his next move when the princesses entered. This time, they didn't laugh. They didn't mock him. They just sat with him. Slowly, they began to share their own stories. The weeks passed slowly, and Darren's days at the Celestial Convergence Citadel became a blur of strange customs, impossible expectations, and small victories. He was no closer to understanding why the AI had chosen him as the steward, but he was beginning to understand one thing. Princesses were starting to see him differently. The first real test came one morning when the great AI arbitrator's voice echoed through the halls of the Citadel. Pulling Darren out of his private quarters and into the grand assembly room, Darren Cole. "Steward of the 4 houses, you are hereby required to attend the inheritance review," the AI announced. Its tone was cold, impersonal, as always. Darren stood still for a moment, staring at the shimmering holographic figure of the AI. He had heard whispers about the inheritance review, but he had never been fully told what it meant. The princesses' reactions, however, gave him a good idea. Varela, who had been practicing her combat skills nearby, turned to him with an unreadable expression. "This is it, human, the real test." "What do you mean?" Darren asked, trying to sound confident, though he felt a little out of his depth. "You've been given authority over us," Varela said, "but that authority comes with a clause. If any of the houses fail in their duties, the steward inherits their power. That power includes everything: territories, armies, resources." The words felt heavy, almost too much to bear. Darren's stomach turned. This wasn't just a diplomatic job. He wasn't just a mediator anymore. He was now a judge, with the power to decide the fate of entire galactic empires. "I don't think I'm ready for that," Darren said, his voice trembling. "I don't even understand half of what's going on here." "None of us are ready," Cora Veen said, appearing at his side. She was dressed in her usual elaborate robes, but there was something different in her eyes now. Less mockery, more respect. It was hard to say, but the inheritance review is unavoidable. You must decide whether to accept or reject the inheritance. If you choose to accept it, you will have control of whatever house fails. And if none of us fail, you will still be steward of the 4 houses. Darren felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He could hardly imagine making such a decision. Could he really take control of an entire empire if something went wrong? But rejecting the inheritance might create even more problems. It was like a trap. One way or the other, he was stuck. The princesses, as if sensing his confusion, didn't press him for an answer just yet. Instead, they led him to the central chamber, where the inheritance review would take place. The room was vast, filled with the faint hum of alien technology and the smell of metallic ozone. As they entered, the great AI arbitrator's hologram flickered to life before them, and its voice boomed in the room. Darren Cole, steward of the four houses. The inheritance review is now in session. You are required to make a choice regarding the future of the four houses. If any of the houses have failed in their duties, you may choose to accept their inheritance or reject it. The princesses stood silently, their faces unreadable. Darren felt small before the AI, as if every eye in the galaxy was on him. He stood tall, trying to gather his thoughts. Varela stepped forward, her metal arms clicking with each movement. The House of Starborn Forge has maintained strength and discipline for millennia, but recent unrest in our border colonies has tested our resolve. The threat of rebellion is growing. Eshlira followed, her voice soft but serious. Living Swarm has faced internal strife. Part of my hive is broken away, seeking independence, or divided. Namika's gaseous form shifted, and her voice echoed in Darren's mind like a distant song. The House of Thren has always held peace with the stars, but I sense a deep unrest in the spirit of my people. Their emotional instability is affecting the balance. Finally, Cora Vin spoke, her voice smooth and calculated. The House of Vin has long ruled with luxury and indulgence, but we are losing our power. Our people are becoming complacent. The threat of decadence and corruption grows stronger each day. Darren's heart raced as the princesses spoke. Each house had its weaknesses, its cracks, and each of them was asking him to make a choice that could change everything. The AI's voice cut through his thoughts. Darren Cole, you must now decide. Do you accept the inheritance of any house, or do you reject it? You are the steward, and your choice will determine the fate of the galaxy. Darren swallowed hard. He didn't have the luxury of time. He had to make a decision, and fast. But what was the right choice? He began, but his mind raced. With too many thoughts, could he truly take control of such vast empires? Would the princesses even allow him to do so? He looked at them. They were all waiting, hoping, perhaps, that he would choose wisely. The weight of his decision crashed down on him. He realized something then. The AI had not chosen him because he was strong or powerful. It had chosen him because he was human. Humans might not have great armies or psychic powers, but they had something else. They had hearts. They could adapt. They could learn. I reject the inheritance, Darren said, his voice firm. The words felt right, though his heart still pounded. Princesses blinked in surprise, but none of them spoke. The AI's hologram flickered again, processing his decision. Your choice has been recorded, the AI said. The four houses will now address their issues without inheritance. The steward's role remains unchanged. Darren felt a sense of relief wash over him. He hadn't taken the easy way out, but he also hadn't thrown his people into chaos. It was a gamble, but it was his gamble. And he had one more thing to do. Make sure the houses solved their problems on their own, without relying on a simple inheritance. He might not be the strongest or the smartest, but he could still lead. With the power of his humanity, the weeks that followed Darren's decision were filled with both tension and unexpected progress. By rejecting the inheritance, he had chosen a path that few would have dared. The four houses no longer had an easy way out. The princesses were left with the weight of their empire's problems, and Darren, though still an outsider, was now their only hope for finding a solution. Varela. Eshlira, Namaka, and Cora Vin had all reacted to his decision differently. Some were angry, some were impressed. But all of them were watching him closely, perhaps waiting to see if the human would crumble under the pressure. Darren knew he couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now. It was a strange kind of power he had, soft, subtle, and often invisible. It wasn't about commanding fleets or wielding psychic abilities. It was about building trust, listening, and offering solutions that worked for everyone. Slowly, very slowly, he was starting to see results. One morning, Darren sat in a large round meeting room with the princesses. Virella's stern expression hadn't softened much, but there was less hostility in her eyes. Eshlira's voice had become less sharp, though still filled with quiet skepticism. Nemeka, ever the enigma, had been more serene, though there was always a flicker of something unspoken in her drifting gaseous form. Koravin, who had once seemed so aloof, was now the one who spoke most often. "We cannot deny it any longer," Cora said, her voice smooth but weary. "Our houses are unraveling. We fight in different ways, struggle with the old ways. But what does the future hold?" Darren had spent the last few weeks learning as much as he could about each house, its history, its traditions, and most importantly, its people. Virella's house had been built on military might, a legacy of warriors and invincible machines. Eshlira's was a complex hive society, a collective of millions of individual minds working as one, but now divided. Nimeka's house had long been spiritual and pacifist, and her people were deeply in touch with their emotions, yet increasingly unstable. Cora's house, the wealthiest, was mired in decadence and complacency. Darren had heard their complaints and their fears, but none of the princesses seemed willing to make the first move to heal their divisions. They were all waiting for something. For someone? For him? "You've been saying the same things for days," Darren said softly, standing up. "I can't fix this. You have to. If you want to make a change, it's going to take all of you, not just me." The room fell silent. It was rare for Darren to speak so plainly, but the princesses needed to hear the truth. "You don't get it, do you?" Virella's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. "We are the rulers of the galaxy, Darren. You're just one human. We've tried everything. What you're asking for, it's impossible." "It's not impossible," Darren said, his voice gaining strength. "It's just different. You're used to fighting, used to forcing your will on others, but that's not what works anymore. The galaxy is changing, and you have to change with it." Eshlira was the first to speak. Her voice was less distant than before, her tone thoughtful. "What are you asking us to do then?" "I'm asking you to listen," Darren replied. "To understand each other not just through force, but through cooperation. You each have strengths, yes, even you, Virella. But you also have weaknesses. The strongest thing you can do now is not fight each other, it's to find common ground." Darren turned to Cora, who had been silent for a while. "Your people are losing touch with their purpose. You live in luxury, yes, but what does it mean? What does it mean for your people to feel lost?" Cora's eyes softened. She had the power to move the stars, to read minds, but even she didn't have all the answers. She had thought herself above all of this, but now she was starting to see that the galaxy wasn't just a game to be won. "I don't know what it means anymore," Cora admitted. "I've always had everything handed to me, but maybe I've been blind." Darren nodded. "Maybe, but we can fix that. We can show your people that there's more to life than pleasure, more to leadership than power." There was a long pause, and then, for the first time, Virella spoke with something other than disdain in her voice. "You're right, we cannot keep pretending that we are the same as we were. This galaxy, ... this era is different. And maybe it's time we stop hiding behind our weapons and our titles." Ishliara joined in. "Perhaps we need to try something ... softer. I don't like it, but perhaps it's the only way forward." Darren smiled. He had no grand plan, no magic solution, but this was a start. For the first time, he felt like the princesses were finally starting to see the bigger picture, not through their own personal lenses, but through the eyes of a whole galaxy that was changing. The next few days were filled with heated debates, late-night discussions, and a surprising amount of honesty. Virella started suggesting new strategies that focused on understanding, not overpowering. Eshlira began to think about the way her people could work together, not just as a hive mind, but as individuals with different goals and desires. Nemeka, though still distant, began to show signs of opening up, allowing her emotions to guide her actions, not control them. Cora started to talk about how to rebuild her people's sense of purpose. A difficult task, but not impossible. Darren was still an outsider, still just a human with no real power. But he was beginning to see that his greatest strength wasn't his ability to rule, it was his ability to listen, to ask the right questions, and to inspire change. And so, the princesses began to change. The air was thick with anticipation. It had been months since Darren had made his decision to reject the inheritance. And though the princesses had started to listen, real change had yet to come. Today would be the first true test of their new direction. The four houses had gathered in the great hall of the Celestial Citadel for an emergency summit. The galaxy was on the edge of conflict-border skirmishes between Virella's forces and rebellious factions from the Starborn Forge were threatening to spill over into full-scale war. Meanwhile, Ashlira's division of the Living Swarm had reached a critical point. Her people were being torn apart by their own infighting. Inimica, though usually calm, had sensed a dangerous instability among the Thren people that could erupt in chaos at any moment. All of this, as expected, had been placed on Darren's shoulders. But this time, he wasn't just a passive observer. This time, he had to lead. The princesses were seated at the high table, their faces as stern as ever. The room felt cold and imposing, a stark contrast to the warmth Darren had tried to bring into their meetings. The walls around them were lined with symbols from each of the houses, proud, ancient marks of power and history. Yet for all the grandeur, Darren couldn't help but feel like an outsider. The princesses, despite the progress they had made in their private discussions, were still unsure of his abilities. And today, they would be watching closely. This was the moment they would finally judge him. He could pull them together. The galaxy might still be saved. If he failed, the damage might be irreversible. Darren stepped forward, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing against him, but he pushed it aside. He had to focus on the problem at hand. Princesses. Leaders of the four houses, Darren began, his voice steady but firm. We stand at a crossroads. This galaxy cannot afford another war, not between us, and certainly not at a time when the unity of our people is more important than ever. We've come too far to let our divisions tear us apart. There was a murmur among the princesses. It was clear that they hadn't expected him to speak so directly. Virella. Your forces are stretched thin, Darren continued, turning toward her. The rebels are growing bolder. They are not your true enemy. The real enemy is division. The real enemy is distrust. You must find a way to talk to the rebels, not just fight them. Show them that there is a place for them in your empire, that they don't have to choose rebellion to be heard. Virella's piercing gaze didn't falter. She crossed her arms but didn't speak. For a moment, Darren wondered if she would dismiss his suggestion entirely. But then slowly she spoke. Perhaps there is a point, she said, her voice low but thoughtful. We've always thought strength was the answer, but it seems we may have missed something. Darren nodded, relieved that she wasn't completely rejecting the idea. But the meeting wasn't over yet. There was more to solve, much more. He turned toward Ashlira next. Ashlira, your people the Swarm are losing their unity, but you cannot force them to come together. The very nature of your society is based on freedom of thought. You must find a way to respect the individuality of your people while restoring that bond between them.
Alira.
S-Wing shimmered. As she tilted her head, the soft buzz of her thoughts hummed in Darren's mind, a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. I don't know if that is possible, she said at last, a note of doubt in her voice. The swarm has always worked as one, but you may be right. If we allow too much separation, we risk losing everything. Darren smiled, grateful for her openness. It won't be easy, but it's the only way forward. Allow your people to find their own paths, while reminding them of the strength that comes from unity. Your strength isn't just in numbers, Ashlira. It's in your people. She said nothing more, but Darren could tell his words had made an impact. There was a shift in her, a willingness to try. Next, Darren faced Nimica, the gaseous princess. Had always been the most spiritual, the least interested in worldly affairs. But her people's instability was the most pressing issue. Her delicate form swirled around him, her voice floating in the air like a breeze. Namika, your people, are driven by emotion. They live in harmony, yes, but when that harmony breaks, the consequences are grave. You need to help them regain balance, not just with each other, but with themselves. Help them remember who they are, not just what they feel. Namaka's presence grew quiet for a moment. Then her voice echoed in Darren's mind, calm yet powerful. I will try, she said softly. Perhaps the answer lies not in trying to control their emotions, but in teaching them to understand them, to find peace within. Darren nodded, feeling a weight lift from his chest. If they could all agree on even the smallest steps forward, there was hope. He knew it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but they were finally on the same path. Finally, Darren turned toward Cora. She had been quiet throughout the meeting, her gaze intense. He had seen her struggle with her people's complacency. Now, he had to challenge her too. Cora, he began, your people are adrift. They have everything, but they've lost their sense of purpose. The luxury they enjoy isn't enough to hold them together. They need a cause, something greater than themselves. You need to give them that. Cora's eyes softened, her posture shifting slightly. I've always struggled with that, she admitted. We've lived in excess for so long we forgot why we became great in the first place. But perhaps it is time to show them the value of something more. Darren smiled. Exactly. You're not just a ruler of indulgence. You are a ruler of potential. Don't let them forget that. The meeting stretched on for hours as they debated, discussed, and even disagreed. But by the end of the day, Darren felt something he hadn't expected. Progress. The 4 houses were divided, yes, but they were no longer broken. Each princess had a plan, a vision for how to heal her people. And for the first time, Darren saw a glimmer of true leadership in each of them. He wasn't the one making the decisions. He wasn't the one ruling. But maybe, just maybe, he had started a change that came not from power or force, but from understanding and cooperation. The tension had lifted. It had taken months, countless meetings, debates, and more than a few failures, but finally, Darren could feel the beginning of something bigger. The princesses had, for the first time, truly accepted the weight of their roles as leaders. They were beginning to see that they couldn't rule alone anymore. The galaxy had changed, and so must they. The decision to work together, to fix their problems instead of inheriting power from each other, had been difficult, but it was the right one. Now, the next challenge was to make it all work. And this time, Darren wasn't just an observer. He was part of their leadership, not through power, but through influence. It had been a month since the summit in the Great Hall. The princesses had been working harder than ever on their respective issues. Varela had engaged in peace talks with the rebels on the Starborn Forge, offering them the chance to return to the fold without losing their honor. Eshli Ra had allowed her people more autonomy, introducing a new system that let each part of the swarm's hive think independently while still retaining their unity. Nemeka had been helping her people regain balance by encouraging emotional awareness, using meditation and collective healing practices to calm the growing instability. Cora had started a program to reconnect her people to their roots, organizing projects that combined luxury with purpose, something that had reignited the passion of her people. But the real test was still to come. Darren sat in a small room, his eyes focused on the holographic map in front of him. The galaxy was vast, and there were always forces working against peace. Now, the peace they had worked so hard for was at risk. The same rebels Varela had been negotiating with had started to unite under a new leader, someone who didn't want peace, someone who wanted revolution. The Alliance of the Broken Stars, they called themselves, and they were gaining momentum fast. They had spread out from the Starborn Forge to the edges of the galaxy, recruiting from among the dissatisfied and the disillusioned. Varela had kept her promise. She had offered peace. But peace, as Darren was learning, was fragile. The princesses, now united in their purpose, gathered for an emergency meeting. Darren joined them in the Great Hall once again, only this time things felt different. They weren't just talking about problems anymore, they were talking about solutions. They were ready. "We cannot afford another war," Varela said, her voice steady. "We have already fought one too many. But the broken stars won't stop unless we give them something they want." Odd. The question is, what? "I've been thinking." "About that," Eschlier replied, her wings humming softly. "They are not fighting for a cause. They're fighting because they feel abandoned, ignored. If we show them we understand their pain, we can bring them to the table." Nemika, who had been floating silently, finally spoke. "Their leaders have nothing to offer but anger and destruction. We must give them a way to rebuild their lives. They need something to believe in again." Cora's voice came next, softer than usual. "And we need to show them that they are not alone. Our people, despite their differences, all want the same thing. A future. A peaceful, prosperous future. They don't need to be conquered. They need to be included." Darren watched them speak, amazed at the transformation. They were no longer the separate princesses of individual houses. They were leaders, united in a common cause. He was no longer an outsider. He had helped them realize that their power didn't lie in their armies or their wealth. It lay in their ability to come together. "We're on the same side now," Darren said, his voice strong. "But we still need to take action. What we do next will decide everything. We need to find their leader, understand what they want, and offer them a better way forward. If we don't, this could spiral into something worse than all of us combined." The princesses nodded in agreement. They'd come so far, but Darren knew that the final step would be the hardest. Over the next few days, a plan was formed. The princesses would meet with the leader of the Broken Stars, offering peace one last time. Darren would be by their side, but the decision would rest with them. The stakes were high, but this was their moment to prove they could lead together. The meeting was held in the neutral zone, a barren world between Varela's domain and the Broken Stars' territory. It was an empty world, but the symbolic gesture was clear. Both sides were here for peace, not for battle. The leader of the Broken Stars, a towering figure with a dark cloak and a fierce expression, stepped forward. His name was Zarek, and he wasn't like the others. He was the embodiment of everything they had feared. A leader born from anger, someone who had seen too much destruction to believe in anything other than rebellion. Darren, standing beside the princesses, felt his heart race. This was the moment that would define everything. Varela stepped forward first, her voice steady. "Zarek, we've come to offer peace, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as equals. We know you've suffered, know your people have been ignored, but we are not the ones who have caused this. We want to help you. We want to build a future where your people have a place." Zarek's eyes narrowed. But there was something in his gaze, something that said he wasn't ready to completely turn away from peace. Eschlier spoke next, her voice calm but firm. "We understand what it's like to be alone, to feel like no one listens. But we are listening now. We want to work with you, not against you." Nemika's voice floated through the air, gentle, but full of resolve. "You're not your enemy, Zarek. Your pain, your rage, it doesn't need to control you. We offer you a chance to heal, to rebuild, to live." Finally, Cora stepped forward, her voice quiet but filled with strength. "You and your people deserve better than this endless war. We all do. It's time for a new path." Zarek stood there for a long moment, his eyes flickering between the princesses and the human beside them. The silence stretched on, thick with tension, but then, slowly, he nodded. "We will listen," Zarek said, his voice rough, but not without hope.
But we will not surrender our freedom. We will negotiate.
And if you truly understand what we want, you will find a way for us to live without fear. The princesses didn't need any more words. They had done it. Peace wasn't guaranteed, but it was possible. For the first time in years, Darren felt the weight lift from his shoulders. The galaxy was not won by power. it was won by understanding. For the first time, he believed they had a chance.